I mean, what was so interesting about this kind of spectacle almost in SoftBank's annual meeting is Masayoshi Son wanted to talk about the big picture, ASI, but investors wanted what investors always want: dividend, buyback, stock split. What did you make of that?
Yeah, completely. I think it's quite an interesting because it sort of almost brings up about a change of strategy for SoftBank from this sort of defensive position that I think it has had over the past few years for a much more offensive position as we have this really ambitious vision from Sun about ASI and the future of AI and what that means for SoftBank. For SoftBank. But I think you can't get away from the fact that at the end of the day, investors do want to have returns. They have seen strong gains on the share price. As you pointed out, we've seen a 60% rally in the share price so far this year. That obviously comes on the back of a 124% rally in ARM holdings. But, at the end of the day, yeah, investors want to see what those numbers are bringing back, and they want to see, share buybacks. That's going to be useful for them as well. Although, as we said, the share price growth has been strong.
It's hard to pick out what the prevailing factor is in the market right now. At the top of the program, we talked about the concern with valuations. Nvidia is trading at 45 times 12-month forward earnings. We're going to look at Apple's valuation later in the program. And then if you take the SoftBank example, like many investors, to summarize, there just seems to be a wholehearted belief that you have to be in AI at all layers of the stack, and if you're not, you'll be left behind. So which comes out on top?
Yeah, I think we can't get away from this idea that AI has really driven such a strong rally in AI stocks. And obviously that's sort of bled out into or transferred out into record highs in the S&P 500 and on the NASDAQ this week as well. So, I think at the end of the day, there might be this sense that perhaps the AI trade right now is a little bit overhyped. But I think over the long term, that's just not the case. And that's the sense that investors are having. We're just really opening the door to the realization and the understanding of what the real world applications of AI actually are. And that's what's really supporting the rally that we have seen. So, although, as you mentioned, there are some suggestions that there could be some level of lofty valuations involved here, I think at the end of the day, the long-term case is very bullish as far as AI is concerned. And that's really supporting the share price. Obviously, we're going to have some pullbacks. No rally is just 100% higher.
Sure.
But I think, investors are in. They're in on this case.
We just showed Nvidia. It's down 2% in the session, but over the course of a week where it became the world's most valuable company, it's down a percentage point. Is this rally over?
Yeah, do it's just a very small move lower after some very strong moves higher. This month so far, Nvidia's up around 16%, had impressive gains last week. I mean, I don't think the rally can necessarily maintain the speeds that it's had, because it has been a really impressive speed that we've seen this share price rocket. It's up 170% so far this year, and that's not maintainable. It's not going to be maintainable. But I don't think that's to say that the rally's over. I think we could just perhaps potentially expect it to slow to a more sustainable pace going forward.